Hey there, friends. This is Bill McDonald from May the Fours, two of them, be with you. Next month, in about a month or so, the 9th and 10th graders in Texas are the majority of them going to be taking their expository and persuasive essays as part of their English 1 test for the very first time. It's sort of like a glance ahead of time of what the ELAR test is going to look like. That will have a combination of reading, editing, revising, and extended essay response questions, along with some 2-pointers. Now, what I want to do for you today is simply show you how to use the word persuasive, your hand, your palm, your fingers, and your toes on your feet, as well as the foundation of the student rubric, which is the prompt page, and the adult teacher rubric, which is on the scoring guide, to help us figure out why so many students are performing so poorly on persuasive, that we'll focus on today, and expository, which we'll focus on another day. But I want you to pay close attention, because I'm just going to use the data from the all testers from last year's spring test, which will also be included with the students who are perhaps taking the persuasive or expository test for the second or perhaps the third time. So data doesn't lie. So before I showed you the student rubric, the adult rubric, and my strategy using your hands, your palm, your fingers, and your toes, I wanted you to take a look at the results from last spring that usually come out, because they're essays. It's going to be for you English 1 and 2 teachers. It'll be the spring of 22, the summer of 22, and December of 22, that you'll still be working on the test in the same format, where you can get 34 points for reading and 34 points for writing. The way that you get the 34 points for writing is that a student has to get an 8 from 2 different readers by getting a 4 and a 4 as they read it. That's what would be considered a 90 to 100 in your grade book, or an A. And the thing about secondary essays, 7th grade no longer being included, 9th and 10th, once those 2 people grade and give that paper a 4 and a 4, that the sum of that is an 8. And because they want the essay to be worth more in secondary, and in this case high school, they double that score. So all these 11,591 students who got 2 4s on expository, all 4% of them, 1 out of every 25 kids. So basically 1 kid per class, if your class has about 25 kids, because 4 times 25 is 100. All right. So in my personal view, in order to see that your program or the curriculum that you're using is highly successful, or that you're showing growth, or that they're improving, is that your students would get either 2 3s, 6 times 2 is 12, a 3 and a 4, 7 times 2 is 14, or a 4 and a 4, 8 times 2 is 16. And that's a pretty high percentage, and that'll help your students really make a big progress towards approaches, meets, or masters expectations. So 32%, meaning only about 1/3 of the students who took the expository last year in April got one of those 3 highest possible scores. So when you subtract 32% from 100, that means that 68% got 2 zeros. 7,485 kids did not respond to the prompt or broke one of the other 8 ways that you can get a 0 responding to a topic with one thesis statement, one idea, or if you're going to put 2 ideas in there, because we have 2 eyes, then in the body you have to give reasons for both of the ideas, that and they have to relate to each other and they have to be developed. But let's take a look, and you might be thinking, well, the only 10th grade does persuasive. As you can see, that's the persuasive for English 2. Well, in that same week, the students who were in English 1 had to write expository. And until last year, we were writing expository in 4th and 7th grade as well. So hopefully there was a good foundation. Well, let's see. Well, unfortunately, only 22% of the students in 9th grade or 10th, 11th, 12th graders who are taking the test for the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th time, whatever, were able to get the 2 3s, a 3 and a 4, or a 4 and a 4, which means that 78% of the students ended up getting 0s, 2 zeros, a 1 and a 1, a 1 and a 2, or a 2 and a 2, or perhaps a 3 and a 2, where at least one grader felt like the paper deserved a 2 or less. And I want you to notice, almost 15,000 students got 0s. And I could tell from reading the prompt, one of the reasons, and I'll talk about that in another video when I talk to you high school teachers about expository and how to move from getting a 2 to a 3, and how to move from getting a 3 to 4, and how to get off zero land and la la land, and how to at least get 2 1s to get that 2 that we're talking about right here. So the easiest thing that I can tell you is to tell your students to go straight to the Be Sure To section and write 1, 2, 3, 4 E on the 5 bullets, and have them label that section before they even look at the topic, the right section. The right section is the right section. Section 3, the first section is the read. The second section is often called the think, and the third section is called the write. But before we even get into the topic, let's label this. How do you get to what they might call one land? State your position clearly. And when I show you the adult rubric in the scoring guide, there's these first 2, and technically first 3, are how to get from 1 from 0 land, what we'll call the organization, to 1 land and to 2 land. Okay. It says that you have to have a clear position. Let's just focus on that. A position that does what? That responds to the specific demands of the prompt. What is your idea about the topic? Okay. So if I hold up my hand, the position is sort of like what they used to call in 4th grade the central idea, the controlling idea, what we call in 9th grade the position statement. So if I touch the center of my palm and wiggle my muscles, you can feel all of them moving. That means that everything I write, including my position and my reasons, my examples, the way I explain, they have to be all related to each other. They all have to tie together. So if my introduction, where my position is the only part that ties into the topic, then you're not going to do very well. You'll be stuck in what's called 1 land, as you can see there. Okay. They also said, make sure that that position is clearly responding to the specific demands of the prompt. Okay. How do I get to 2 land? Use appropriate organization. Well, besides stating your position in a specific demand to this prompt, let's go ahead and read it now. Write an essay stating your opinion on which is more important, preparing for the future or focusing on the present. So just writing preparing for the future as your position statement can be done, but that's very vague, and you're going to have to turn that vague into something more specific in the body if you don't give a specific position statement in your introduction or wherever you choose to give it. If you say that you focus on the present, well, focusing on the present, what will that cause to happen? Why do you need to focus on the present? So what they're looking for is, since it's your opinion, once you tell one of those, organization means, why do you feel that way? What's your reason? And if you can give me a reason, maybe give me an example of that, because it says there's a relationship between your ideas. Your essay is unified. And because the specific demand said, give me your opinion, they want to know your student's reason why they chose it. And a lot of times, giving an example can get you a 1 or a 2 if you can get your kids to remember to do that. Okay, that's the O of what I call DOC, the TEA scoring rubric. Okay, how to go from 0 land to 1 land or 2 land is to have a statement that has your position. And that's the cool thing about the first letter in the word persuasive is position. But what was the purpose? Persuasive. What was the prompt? Preparing for the future or focusing on the present. Should you make a plan? Yes. Okay. Should you have an ending? Yes. You want to exhort the reader and your essay by tying everything together. But let's see how to get to 3 land. Provide specific support for your argument. I call that in my folder GPS, get pretty specific. So if you're going to give me one reason and just one idea, you need to support that reason with details, sentences. So here's the problem. You could have 10 sentences for that reason or that example that you use. You could have 5, as long as the reader determines that whatever reason or example that you give, that you specifically support that reason or that argument with accurate details. A lot of kids just make stuff up. So where does it say that in the development? Right there, the first bullet. The development of the ideas, the D of doc is very effective. The argument is forceful and convincing because the reasons, remember that I mentioned that, the evidence that you use, whichever evidence you use, are supporting your position. They're specific GPS and well chosen. This is how to get to a 4. You could have the most boring ideas and still get 2s and 3s. But this part right here, this well chosen part, that only shows up for 4 land. Is your idea different? Is the way that you develop it well chosen? Do you use a great example to support your reasons and your thesis, your position? I'm sorry, the position that you take. Okay. Where's that? Right there on developing. How do you get to 4 land? 1, 2, 3, 4 gets a good score. 5, 6, 7, 8 turns good to great. Thinking of that. 1, 2, 3, 4 gets a good score. 5, 6, 7, 8 turns good to great. So all they know is just these bullets here. It shows them how to get a 4. How to get to 4 land. Don't just give me a position. Don't give a corporate organization. Don't just develop the body, but develop your introduction and your conclusion as well by specifically supporting, because you want a great appetizer, meat, vegetables, and dessert. You want the whole meal, not just a bite of each little thing, because that becomes a list. Lots of reasons or examples is not expository or persuasive. That's a example Tory, and there's an E right there. Once you give your position, what examples or what reasons do you want to give to turn that 1 into a 2? Do you support those reasons specifically to turn that 1 to a 2 to a 3? Okay. What does a 4 say? Choose your words carefully. How to get to 4 land? Watch this. Okay. 1, the position. Number 2, have good reasons and examples. 3, develop that reason specifically. Each one. You're going to have 3 reasons, develop all 3. You're going to have 2 reasons, develop both of them. If you're going to have 1, they don't say how many reasons you have to have. The student will look at in the next video with an actual essay, uses 1 reason the entire time and gives 1 example of how not doing what he suggests in his position is going to cause lots of problems. But you'll notice my 4th finger, like the 4th bullet. Choose your words carefully. If I take the W in the word words and separate it, I get 2 V's. What they're saying is use higher vocabulary that fits appropriately to the persuasive task and use your voice. Your voice is inside your head. Your thoughts and your opinions about the topic, your idea, your reasons why you feel that way, your examples. Try to choose your words carefully, and the essay that we look at has that. And where is that in the adult rubric? Right there in the second part of development. Don't just develop, but have voice. It's very thoughtful and engaging. So that's why my fourth finger, I have my wedding ring to remind you, be engaging. There's complexities of the issue. How can you talk about the things that make your position of focusing on the future or the present more important? You might, and this is only mentioned in foreland, consider the opposing or alternate views. So it's not to say that you can't get a 4 if you don't do that, because it says the writer may choose to consider opposing or alternate point of views. So let's take a look at persuasive towards the end. Think of that V as, what are the various viewpoints that I could bring out before I end and exhort the reader to change? What did we say? Our essay should be unique. That's what thoughtful and engaging is. Unique experiences of the world. Connect in interesting ways. Interesting starts with an I. So unique. The argument has specific word choices. It's insightful. It's interesting. So basically all these letters in the word persuasive can be a guide, because it's right there on the top of your prompt page where the purpose is written. What's your position? Once you know the prompt and the purpose, and make a plan. Give your point of view and perspective. That's the voice part. That's how you can develop the introduction more. To go to 2-land, examples and reasons. How to go to 3-land, gives us specific support that's unique and accurate, and a reminder that they're specific, okay? That they're insightful. All that is how to get to a from a 3 to a 4, and that's this part right here is the biggest thing that separates a 3 from a 4, because as I mentioned, the 3 adult rubric doesn't even talk about considering opposing or alternate viewpoints. Opposing and alternate means the opposite of what you choose. If you're saying that we should focus on the present, the opposing view addressing focusing on the future would be an opposing view, or some alternate view. You can talk about something else, other things that people do besides, but just don't get too distracted. It's best to focus on whatever the opposite of what your position is. So now our last bullet, how do I keep the 4 and don't eliminate my 4 points and move it all the way back? Well, make sure, number 1, that your paper has an ending, because I was told for all STAR essays, the essay must have an introduction, which we'll talk about in bullets 1 and 2, a body that we'll talk about in bullets 3 and 4, and an ending that we'll talk about in the last bullet. But once you're done with your E, take your paper to the ER, the emergency room of editing and revising, for the grammar, the mechanics, spelling. And what does the adult rubric say? There's conventions. The word choice, purposeful, we mentioned that already. Choose your words carefully. So that's a combination here. Your word choice, your vocabulary is this portion. And this portion of getting a 4 is your voice, your thoughts, opinions, emotions, what you think, feel, believe about your reasons, your examples, and your position. Okay. The sentences are purposeful, varied, and well controlled. In other words, you don't have to have every sentence being a compound or complex or 20, 30, 40 word sentence. You don't have to have 16,000 figurative language expressions. Make sure that everything that's there is for a purpose, for a reason. Control and flow your sentences. Sometimes you can say more with your pencil in 2 or 3 words than you can say in 20 or 30. So the last part is basically the cups, capitalization, usage, the grammar, punctuation, spelling, right there. Sentence boundaries, such as run-ons and fragments. And since it doesn't mention ending, make sure that when you put that, you understand that as part of the organization, sustaining the focus means all the way to the end, that everything's unified and coherent, not just repetitive, because just repeating yourself at the end and restating things you've already said, that's not unique. That's not giving the reader dessert. That's giving them leftovers. So let's review using simply the word persuasive. Did you look at the prompt, the third bullet called the right section? Did you make a plan? You're trying to get a 3 or a 4. Are you presenting? Are you choosing to use your unique experiences and view of the world? That's your personal perspective or point of view. Your thoughts and your opinions that are inside your head, and or your feelings and emotions that are inside your heart. You just want to make sure they get a 1 or a 2. Make sure they have a position that responds to the prompt. Yellow, introduction. E, engaging evidence. What are you going to be using to prove your position? What example can you use? So what you might have your students do is before they even state their position, ask them which example or which experience can they use to support and develop the most. We want a reason that's relevant. And if there's reasons, they have to be related. Let me show you why. It says in 4 land and in 3 land, there's clearly showing a relationship among the ideas, meaningful transitions that have connections. So you just can't relate to your position. Each reason that your students give has to relate to each other. Has to support the position. Okay, so make sure that that's important. Specific situations. Where was that in our adult rubric? Specific support the third bullet. The first box here. Support the position are specific, well chosen. Look at this word argument. So specific situations, an accurate argument. How do I get to make sure? Make sure there's strong supporting sentences. So take a specific real situation, realistic current event, or a historical event. Doesn't matter which one, situation or situations, Be careful though, because if you give me 6 examples, that's called the list. And we want to make sure we're doing persuasive that's developed, not persuasive without the S's. Per, 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 doesn't sound like persuasive if you're not giving it specific support. So strong supporting sentences, and that you there and that I is where that second bullet comes from. Choose your words carefully by having higher vocabulary and uh, interesting, unique. Where does that say that? It's in the second bullet. Is your essay thoughtful? Is it engaging? Is it your unique experiences? That's your point of view, not just in your introduction, but in the paper as well. So is your word choice purposeful and precise to help the essay not just be engaging and interesting? And it says you can choose to use your own unique experiences. That's permission to use a personal example of your own or somebody that you know, a relative, a current event, somebody that you know in the movies or in a book or a, and I'll get into the brainstorming part in another video, just trying to show you how to use the student rubric and the adult rubric and my little persuasive. Is their voice, is the vocabulary, did you take the time to address the various viewpoints? Because it says that in Borland. Your voice, is it thoughtful and engaging by sharing your unique view of the world, your personal thoughts, opinions, emotions, the senses, the setting in terms of the way you see, hear, smell, taste, touch. Um, you can connect all your ideas in interesting ways as long as you're responding to your topic with an idea, a position statement that ties everything together. If you're going to do some various viewpoints, notice that I have it towards the end, so you can either include it as part of your ending, touch on the opposing viewpoints, give some acceptance of the possibility that other people's viewpoints could be valid, but bring it back as soon as possible so that you're not spending so much time on the opposite being awesome that you forget about why your view is awesome. Now, don't get me wrong. You can state a position of saying that focusing on the present is important, and your reasons and whatever can be a personal experience of what goes wrong when you focus on the future and having success in the future and have a transition that allows you to come back and say it's because of that that I really feel that you need to focus on the present. And that's what the essay that we're going to look at does. That E, that was that last bullet, did you have an ending? Can you make an emotional extension? Could you give more than just a restating of the prompt or your position statement that you've already mentioned? Can you rephrase yourself in some way? Can you make an emotional connection as a heart connection? So you could make uh, an emotional connection, or you could make a head connection. Encourage, exhort the reader to think differently or to feel differently based on all of the ideas that you've shared. And then, as it does mention, take time to edit your paper, take it to the ER, which was um, cups, capitalization, usage, punctuation, spelling, and sentence boundaries such as run-ons and fragments. Make sure if you have a reason there, if you have two reasons and only one of them is developed, then remove one of the reasons. That's called revising. If you forgot to get specific or to support it well enough, it's better to have one reason that has GPS where you get pretty specific than to have two or three reasons where you only develop one or two of them. So focus on helping your kids with one reason that has a specific situation. And the other quick thing, like I mentioned, is how do I make this connection in a different way, because we want to differentiate our instruction. What's your purpose? It's persuasive. The prompt, was it more important to prepare for the future or focus on the present? Did you make a plan? Once you make a plan, then you can have a position statement. Do you want to have a hook? Have a wow beginning. What other words could I use besides the exact words of the prompt? What other way could I write my sentences so I can change the order in terms of the usage and the I don't have to always have a noun followed by a verb. We can vary our sentence structure by playing what I call around the words in 80 ways, starting with different parts of speech. What original way can I start? Are there any words of wisdom, is like such as a truism or a quote or a special saying that you can start with as your wow or end with uh, at the end? Position statement is very critical because you could have all of these things on fingers 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're ending. But if you forget your position statement, if it's unclear or missing, it does say in one land that you can possibly get a 1. Sometimes if they feel like you're talking about things that have nothing to do with the topic of preparing for the future or focusing on the present, the specific demands of the prompt. It's sort of like if you're going to do extended or essay responses next year, focus on the specific demands of the question. If your answer has nothing to do with the question, in this case, if your position has nothing to do with the prompt, purpose and prompt in your palm, then you're in danger of getting or staying in zero land. How do I get it to from a 1 to a 2? Have a reason or two, or an example or two. What real life personal example for yourself or someone you know can you use? It's called an anecdote. What realistic, it didn't really happen, but it could. Hypothetical situation could you use? A lot of that is done in second person. Is there a current event based on something that's happening, since your 9th and 10th grade students are usually 13, 14, 15 years old? Is there something, some idea, some movie or book or song or something that's going on in the news in the last 10 to 15 years that I could use? Or is there some historical event, something that happened before I was born, but I can use that example? And so try to zoom in on one or two. And a lot of times what students will do is they'll have a dual position statement where they talk about two good things that will happen if you focus on the present, or two good things that will happen if you focus on the future. Well, if you're going to have two examples, you just have to make sure that you go from blue to green and explain those examples with specific supporting sentences for each reason. Ask the common W questions: who, what, when, where, why, which, how. For the example that you give, answer as many of those questions for that example that you're going to use as possible. Asking yourself this question: how does this relate to my topic I've been given, and my position statement, the direction that you chose to go, so that it stays the focus of your attention. How do I get to foreland? 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't forget to choose your words carefully by using higher vocabulary, voice, and possibly addressing various viewpoints, because that's what it said. What are things in my head, my thoughts, and my opinions? What are things in my heart, my emotions, and my feelings? That will make the reader be interested. It's unique and it's thoughtful, it's engaging, it's connecting me to what you're writing. And you're also remembering to choose higher vocabulary whenever possible. If you decide to address various viewpoints, try to do that in just maybe 2 or 3 sentences so that you don't get sidetracked supporting the opposing or various viewpoint instead of the one that you're trying to prove with your accurate arguments and support. That last bullet was the E that I told you. Make sure there's an ending. Ending, maybe 2 sentences. Conclusion, 1, 2, 3. What 2 or 3 sentences can I use to either restate with repeating and leftovers, or how can I extend? How can I have an extension that has, maybe you can rephrase your position statement in some other words. What other words can you use? What reflection can I give? How is my world or the world in general going to be different or better if we focus on the present, or if we prepare for the future? Basically, we'll call that the dessert. Did you make a call to action? Did you exhort or evoke or encourage some sort of change or transformation in the life? How was your life transformed because you actually did the things that you wrote about? If you gave a real life personal experience. And then don't forget that last bullet also has the editing, the cups portion. Take your paper to the emergency room. Time where you spend some editing, fixing the conventions, the grammar, and revising, fixing the content by either adding some sentences for more development, removing one of your reasons if you feel like it's not developed enough, and replacing it with a better reason, a better example, or with more sentences that support your best reason, so that you for sure can go from a 1 to a 2 to a 3. Now, if you're a teacher who has students who struggle, your goal is to get 1s and 2s, because a 1 plus 1 equals 2, double it 4, 2s and 2s, 4, double it, you can get 8 points just by focusing on the palm and the first 2 fingers, according to the student rubric and the adult rubric, and a couple of ways to get some of that 4th finger, the voice. It says, key to a great store: don't judge a person till you walk a mile in his shoes, because inside of his shoes, which are his voice, what we'll call the spice to the appetizer, the meat, the vegetables, the spice, and the dessert. What is the spice? Toes. inside my shoes? Did you address the topic in some unique way? Do you have a truism, a quote, a saying? Do you have great transitions that are meaningful as you move from the introduction to the body and from the body to the conclusion? Did you use your head connection with personal opinions and thoughts, your unique point of view and perspective? Did you use your heart connection with telling your emotions with words or showing them with your actions? The things that you do when you have that positive or negative emotion, the things that you might say, or the senses, how the world's going to look or smell or taste or sound different or feel different. Did you remember your vocabulary or figurative language by using some salsa to spice that up? So those are just some suggestions. I used number one, the student rubric. I used the adult scoring guide. I used the actual word persuasive, and I used my hand, and I'm raising my hand because I will have a hand on the day of the test to remind me to have a position, to make a plan, to understand the purpose of persuasive, that I can give my own point of view and perspective, that I can make that position. I can give reasons and examples to make sure I can for sure get a 1 or a 2. I can develop those reasons with specific support to go from a 2 to a 3. I can turn that 3 to a 4 by giving engaging, insightful, unique, by choosing my words carefully with higher vocabulary and voice. What was the toes there? And to make sure I keep that 4, I have an ending, because watch what happens if I remove, if this is the introduction, this pointer finger is my body that has specific support, and my pinky is the conclusion. If there's no ending, that looks like an L that's backwards. So if I give you a forward L, if I have my introduction, my body, but no ending, a lot of students use that little expression to call themselves or others losers. Well, no one's a loser, but you lose 2 points because before she retired, Victoria Young said students must write complete essays in order to qualify for a 3 or a 4. You just can't have the introduction and the body and then give what I call the reader whiplash, where you just abruptly stop the paper without closing and tying everything together, like the bottom of your feet have shoes with laces where you tie it together. The top of your head has a topic, a prompt that's followed by a position that has 1 or 2 points that you're going to make and focus on. You could share your opinions there if you want to, or your uh, heart connection. It's also your point of view and perspective. So you've got lots of ideas there. Uh, be aware that it's hard to get 3s and 4s, just as a reminder, so you won't be discouraged. In Texas, with all students, all 334,000 students for expository, only 22% of the kids got 3s and 4s. So when I go to a training with some of your students, I'll be doing May the 4s be with you. But with others, I might be doing May the 1s or May the 2s be with you, so that your students can at least get some points in expository or persuasive. Because remember, the cool thing about high school is that they'll double that essay score. So for those of you who are preparing, I'm spending some time on this because a lot of you who are end of course English 1 or 2 teachers, your test is in April, not May. So you have less time to prepare. So I'm going to spend a week or so working on how to go from 1 land to 2 land to 3 land to 4 land. And I hope that you saw my post about how to show 30 to 50% in growth and gains in the next 30 to 50 days that you have before the test. And I'll be offering that for $30 for the month of March, $30 for April, and $30 for May. And for those of you who can't afford a training, I'll even continue doing videos that are specific to your needs. And only you people who are paying for the paid version of those videos will be able to see those. I'll still be helping lots of you with simple ideas, but I want to help those of you who are really trying to show great gains and growth. Uh, and I really feel like because we still have March, April, and May, we can have anywhere between 30 to 50% in terms of growth and gains in terms of where your kids are at right now. We'll start over here right now to where they end up by the time they take that test in that beginning of April for you English 1 and 2 teachers. We've got to make those gains in the next 3 to 4 weeks. That's why I wanted to start early with you guys and help, because that's the big thing that's different. Your students have to do an essay already that counts. They have to do 9 questions of editing and 9 questions of revising. So I want to make sure that I help all of you 3rd through 8th grade teachers. When I do post an editing or revising video, remember that your students are going to possibly get 6 editing questions or 6 revising. 6 revising would be in 2 different passages with 3 questions each, or they'll get 1 editing passage that has 6 questions in it from what the 2023, 2022 May test design schematic says. So if you have any questions, feel free to message me. My next video will be showing you a 4 that did all those things in persuasive, trying to convince, and only used 1 reason based on 1 position, 1 idea about the topic, 1 reason why, and 1 personal example that they explained and exploded with higher vocabulary and voice, had a strong ending or a conclusion. And you can tell that for the most part, they did take time to edit because the paper is not perfect. No one is, but it has very limited mistakes in conventions and very few mistakes in content. One way to improve your content, because it does say choose your words carefully, is when you finish your essay, just remove any watered down words, baby words, off limit words, remove them and replace them with some higher vocabulary that's appropriate for what you're saying. Add some adjectives that describe maybe your opinions or the size or the shape or the color of something. give an emotional connection that's not just sad or happy or mad. Use high vocabulary. That's the easiest way to do revising is just take out some of your weaker vocabulary. It's called removing, and replace it with vocabulary that's a little bit higher on the vocabulary ladder. So hope you enjoyed this explanation that I use several methods to explain persuasive with. Share or tag one of your teacher friends who is English 2 or any other grade levels in your state of confusion, or Texas, or whatever one that is practicing persuasive and you wanted to take a different approach. Once more, I used the student rubric, which will be there on test day, the adult rubric, which you teachers will use as a guide when you look at the scoring guides and the examples, the word persuasive itself that's on the top of the page, and they can remember the most important ones that you teach them, or the hand, palm, fingers, and toes method that I showed you last. So hopefully, at least one of those, hopefully you got some writing tool to add to your toolbox. I'm going to several schools over the next couple of months, but hopefully I'll have time to come visit you either live and in person or here on YouTube and Facebook in the $30 for a 30 to 50 days to improve 30 to 50%. Good night and God bless.